What is up, friends of Grappling Hour? Hey, we're excited to bring you a brand new segment wherein we take apart certain parts of things that happen, say, in mixed martial arts fights or Jiu-Jitsu matches across the world. We take a little bit of a closer look with our good friend Michael Frausto, who, by the way, has been taking photos and amazing videos of Jiu-Jitsu competitions for years, and I'm so glad that he brings his unique eye and a little bit more in-depth analysis. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the show our good friend, Michael Frausto. Mike, how you doing, sir?
Good. What's going on, brother? It's good to be back.
Hey, man, it is a pleasure to have you. I'm so glad that we're doing this segment because I don't know if people know this, but in addition to doing all of that camera work and all the stuff that you're doing behind the scenes, you are an excellent coach, and I wanted somebody to break down some of these really epic moments that happen in MMA. Now, you picked a really, really good thing to lead off our series with. Can you tell us what we're going to be breaking down today?
Yeah, so we're going to be looking at Chase Hooper from, I believe, this last weekend's fights. Chase was losing pretty much the entire fight leading up to that. He had some good entries and some good attempts to bring the fight to the ground, try and entangle the legs. And it wasn't until the third round, after he took a ton of damage to his leg, ton of shots up top, that he was actually able to get it, stayed there for a while for him to work, and then finally got the heel hook finish. And it was nice, man. It was good to see. And apparently he credits that to some extra training he's been doing that we'll talk about right now.
Well, I wanted to ask you, when you first saw this, how did you first see this clip? Was it somebody sending it to you? Were you watching it live?
So I was watching it live and I was losing my mind. I think I might have told you, watching the entire event, this was something I was like planning days in advance. And literally I had everything set up. As soon as it hit 4 o'clock, I was like, all right, I'm chilling out on the bed. I'm putting the TV on and we are just going to watch these fights. So I was losing my mind. I was in here by myself, kind of screaming. I think my roommate panicked for a bit, but well worth it. It was a good night of fights.
And before we go into the actual technique, did you have a high expectation at all going into this fight that we were going to end in a heel hook?
Not specifically. I've watched Chase Hooper a bit. I haven't studied him as closely to like know what his go-tos are. But obviously everyone knows he's a very talented grappler. So I was expecting some grappling, but didn't have any insight into like his preference of finishes. So once he started kind of, taking some shots and making attempts at the legs, especially with as much damage as he took, I kind of figured that would be his best shot to get it there. Once you're tired, it's difficult to get chokes and strangles from any other position. So I felt the legs were the best shot, but the way it came was pretty sick.
Well, speaking of that, let's go straight to it. So we're going to break this down bit by bit. You have 5 details that you thought were pretty important for us to look at. So why don't we go ahead and take a look at the very first detail right now?
So the first thing was the entry. I rewatched the fight. He had a couple of other entries throughout the duration of the fight. What made this one a little bit different was that he pressed forward on these. Some of the other ones he was trying to time off of Barrett coming in, but on this one he led with a 1-2. So Barrett's a southpaw. He came in southpaw and he matched him with that. Chase was kind of switching his stances between the two. He came in southpaw, and one detail I wanted to point out is the way he's gripping his leg right now. So he threw his 1-2 from southpaw position to close the distance, and he has a grip going from the inside, wrapping around the back of Barrett's knee. Now, typically, if you do like an Eminari roll, it's your opposite leg that's going to come around. The way he's going, you usually want to roll towards the outside of your opponent's body. In this case, he's going towards the center line of his opponent's body. So he has to weave his legs a little bit differently, and he does. So that grip is one thing that we've seen Ryan Hall do a lot. He even said he's been training with him a bit. So that grip is super important, and I think something that someone should start to look out for. It's a little bit more difficult for the person standing to be able to pull that knee free and get themselves out of that position.
Before we go, I actually wanted to ask this, though. I also love the feint that he was doing that set it up, because it seemed to kind of throw off Pete a little bit when he was setting it up. Almost looked like he was going to keep within that striking distance. So I thought that was pretty cool before he went into the Eminari. I thought, man, well done there, Chase.
It's a clean setup. And like you said, Ryan Hall does it a lot where he overcommits on that right hand, or the left hand in this case, because he was throwing from southpaw, which typically you don't want to do. But if you're trying to fall into an Eminari roll or fall into some sort of leg entanglement, to be able to like throw your body off and get to that position is honestly the best thing to do. So he did it really well.
Well done. All right, let's go to the second step that you want us to take attention to.
So in the top left image, this one was interesting. So like I said, based off that grip, your legs are going to end up in a different position. And here he has his right leg weaved behind the right leg of Barrett. And it's in a position of like a calf slicer, right? So if you notice in that top left image, that Chase's head is directly under Barrett. So he can go one of two directions. He can go out the back door, in which case that would open up the calf slicer and allow him to lock his hands around Barrett's hips and start to triangle his legs and put some hip pressure to try and finish that calf slicer. He made a good adjustment in pulling out the other way. So then his head came out the front side of Barrett's body. And just by the way he was making that entry, there was a lot of momentum carrying him that would normally pull their head towards the backside or towards the back end of that. But he was able to kind of pause in position, reframe, and readjust to get his head out, which put him in the 50-50 position that you see in the second image. And now one thing from that is just the position that they landed in. As soon as they hit the ground, he had the leg, but he didn't have full control yet. They kind of sat there for a bit, and Chase started throwing some shots to try and loosen the grips, and eventually worked himself into a position where he had better control over the knee. But it was interesting to see him sit in this position and to see Barrett kind of hold on to this a little bit longer than I personally think he should have.
Which I think is a good transition to going to that third step. So we'll go to that third detail right now.
This is where we have basically two angles of that same position. And this is sort of when they landed, right? So Chase hit that entry, they got to the ground, and you could see it better from that previous angle where his knee isn't fully in yet. So as soon as they land, you can see in the top left image that Barrett is holding Chase's wrist. He has wrist control 2-on-1 on Chase's left arm, but Barrett's right arm is underneath Chase's leg. So he's holding it in a really awkward position where he doesn't really have, the most control because his hand is kind of trapped in position. So if he lets go to try and readjust that, that's usually the opportunity that Chase can start to pull the leg in even deeper. But what I would do in this position would be, if he has 2-on-1, you've already established your grips. If I was in Barrett's position, I would try and maintain that control with the cross grip, which is Barrett's left hand, and then pull that right arm out and start to frame on Chase's left knee. And that would allow him to get his knee away from Chase's hips. And that would make him a little bit safer, easier for him to start to build a base with his opposite leg and then start to slowly free that leg out. And he could have done it in a manner that was, precautious and not get too anxious to get out and get caught. He could have taken his time with that, given that he had such a good grip on Chase's arm, but in my opinion, sat a little too long.
Understood, mine as well. And I want to give a big shout out. Pete is apparently family with us here at Verbal Tap. He is a friend of our dear friend, one Austin Stack, who was telling me how excited he was fighting. And I said, Chase is kind of our boy too. So good luck to you. And once I saw this, I thought, how nice of you to give some suggestions on some defense. But that's not where we end here. We go on. We want to get towards that finish. So we go to detail number 4.
Yeah, which is interesting. Barrett had a lot of good defense throughout. I think, this was definitely the deepest entanglement that Chase had. But even, some attempts that he had were still pretty close. And Barrett showed a good know-how on the ground to kind of shut that down before we even got into this third round period. But now we're in a position where, when they landed in that 50-50 position, it was favoring Chase a little bit more because we were staying in that stagnant position of that 2-on-1 wrist control. So in order to break that, Chase takes his free arm, which in this case is his left arm, because you see he still has, in the left picture, he still has that 2-on-1 wrist, and starts to move Barrett's leg to the other side. He grabs the heel, starts to pull it across his body, which is really smart because if you can't break that grip, you're not going to be able to finish on that side. But the second you start to pull it towards that outside heel hook, now you have a wedge with your body and your lat and your elbow, and you can start to trap that leg a little bit easier. Versus on the other side, you need that free arm, or that one that Barrett's trapping with his 2 grips, and you need that free to be able to get your grip in place and to at least keep some pressure with your elbow on it. So Pete was doing a good job on that one. Bottom right image, you see they start to lean towards the side of Barrett's right leg, and that's where he wants to get to. In that first image, Chase is kind of flat on his back, and he's just trying to get into the position first to pass the leg over. Once he gets it across, he immediately starts to turn his body, and as you'll see in the next slide after this is that he has his legs entangled really well, so it makes it easier for him to get to Barrett's hip and start to tilt him towards that side for the finish. Super clean work.
I just want to point out something here. I mean, look, dude, I wish all of us had the ability to finish heel hooks by punching somebody in the face, but that's not the only thing that's really securing the finish here. We go to detail number 5 right now, the finish.
So this was the best part, right? He got to a good position, and you can see right here, he has his left elbow wedged really, really, really tightly around Barrett's leg, and he's keeping it trapped. He has his body leaning all the way over his foot, which is a great detail, but Barrett's still kind of sitting upright, so we want to get him towards his right hip and get him kind of pinned towards the mat. But again, in this position, his best option would be to try and build a base of some sort. But if you see in this next slide that Chase is doing a really good job with the way his legs are entangled to trap Barrett's far leg, which is his left leg. And you can see the way it's weaved underneath. Doesn't really have any options here. His option would be to try and pummel those legs out, but he's got two hooking that far side. So that's going to make it really, really challenging. He had a little bit of defense here that if we think he would have used a little bit better, which is that underhook. You see Barrett has his left arm underneath Chase's right leg, and you can kind of maybe use that to keep it in place as he starts to pummel his leg free. But it was just too strong when he had both of his legs weaved all the way through. He has his weight fully entangled on top of Barrett's legs here. At this point, it's tough, man. It's you're in a shootout at this point, and it's just who can draw faster. Chase was definitely faster on this one, and you can see right here, he gets the grip. Again, with his body just fully on it, there's nowhere for him to go. He has to free that opposite leg, but Chase is just doing way too good of a job preventing him from pummeling his leg through. So once he gets that grip, I mean, it's a straight shot from there and super clean finish. So he eliminated his escape, got a clean amount of pressure on top of that leg, got his grip in place, and ultimately the finish.
And there you have it. That is the finish. Now, I know, Frausto, you were asking me if we do a cheers. I don't have, you know what? I have like a LaCroix. It's not really my...
That counts. It's the same color. It's almost.
What are you drinking there, sir? What is that?
I'm drinking a Rack Focus Space Rex. Hazy IPA from Fremont. See, I think nowadays, just as with anything, I think people are starting, I buy beer for the label. I think that's what we do. We click on YouTube videos for the cover. I just buy beer for the label and hope it's good.
Well, here's some bad news, and I have to tell you this before we do the cheers and the toast to him, which is that he opted not to, now that he is 21, have a beer in place of chocolate M&Ms. So, here's what we're going to do. Since you're not drinking tonight, Chase, we're going to take one for you, bud. Here's a big toast to you. Congratulations on an excellent heel hook finish. Props to you. Props to Ryan Hall. We got mad love for you. Thanks for tuning in on this special episode of Detail with our good friend Mike Frausto. We'll see you guys a little bit later. Cheers.
Peace.
That was flat. But,
Looked like it had been sitting there for a while.